Hey everybody, John Mark here. Welcome to the first video in a series of videos where Kurt Doolittle and I are going to be going through an updated Constitution for America. We could call it Constitution 2.0 for America 2.0. This updated American Constitution honors the Founding Fathers' intent and completes the Founding Fathers' vision. We could call it the Proprietarian Constitution because it utilizes the insights of proprietarianism, which takes the success strategy of Western civilization and puts it into scientific and legal language. Whatever we want to call it, this is the solution for the crisis we are in at the moment in America, and it is the long-term solution for the grassroots right wing in America, and not just in America, but throughout the entire West, because there are aspects of this Constitution that touch on helping save the entirety of Western civilization from a dark age and instead ushering in a new renaissance. So in this video, we're going to be going over some of the key policies that are contained in this updated American Constitution, some of the powerful policies that are going to improve your life and all of our lives significantly for the better. The way this video series is going to be laid out is Kurt and I recorded an introductory video to give you an overview of the Constitution, and after we recorded it we realized it's a little bit long to have people absorb it in one sitting, so we're dividing that up into 4 short to medium length videos. This one right here is where we're going to go into some of the policies and touch on those, and the other parts you see on your screen, what we're going to go into in those videos. And then after that introductory part of this video series, then we're going to go more in depth with videos where we're going article by article through this updated American Constitution. So you need to understand that this second American Constitution is a very thorough solution. If as a grassroots right-winger you sense a problem, this Constitution fixes it. And I'm not going to go through this list that you see on your screen right now, and this is not even a complete list, but I just want you to be aware that this Constitution is very, very thorough, and Kurt Doolittle is covering the bases that we need to cover. Another thing to make clear to the audience, we are very aware that this is not something that's going to be implemented just by voting it into place. There is going to be a shakeout in America. The current system is not going to last because very soon the grassroots right wing, the right wing in general, and the Republican Party in general is not going to be able to win any national level elections anymore just because of immigration. Most non-white people vote left wing by a factor of more than 2 to 1, and of course most immigrants are non-whites, and so very soon the right wing's not going to be able to win any elections and will have zero political power in the current system. So there is going to be a shakeout. What we are proposing with this Constitution is to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and try to actively affect that shakeout and produce a solution. So as you'll see as we go along, this Constitution provides the solution for the crisis that we are in, and it provides a long-term solution for the grassroots right wing specifically to make sure that this doesn't happen again and to where our descendants don't have to go through this again. Quick note about the author of this Constitution. His name is Kurt Doolittle. He's a very successful person in the real world. He was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he built many companies from scratch and sold them. One of them he sold to, for example, Microsoft. He's rubbed shoulders with people like Bill Gates and Larry Ellison. Once he made his money, he retired early, and instead of kicking his feet up on a boat somewhere sipping whiskey, he dedicated himself and worked his tail off to try to figure out how to save Western civilization and to do it as permanently as could realistically be hoped for. And so he spent 10 years, now it's more than 10 years, reading all the pertinent literature, the history, the books, the scientific papers and research studies, the output of the think tanks, on and on. You can see the Proprietarian reading list of books on the proprietarianism.com website. So I don't know of anyone that would be more qualified to do this than Kurt Doolittle. So before we go into this part where Kurt and I are talking about some of the policies in the Constitution, I just want to ask you, the audience, to do us a favor and try to be helpful rather than harmful. In other words, absolutely ask questions. We want you to ask questions because that helps us know what we need to explain better, what's perhaps not clear enough when we're talking about it, whatever the case may be. At the same time, we ask you to do us a favor and don't speak confidently in ignorance. We get that sometimes where people throw something out and they really just don't know what they're talking about. I'll just put it this way. If you have not read basically every book in the Proprietarian reading list that you see on your screen there, And there are many books in each one of those sections, or at least have an idea of what those books say. And if you're not aware of the various scientific studies and the various areas of research, you probably should not be speaking confidently trying to correct what is in this Constitution. But absolutely ask questions. Say, why are you putting this in there? Why are you doing it this way? Because there is a very, very good reason for every single thing that is in this Constitution. Also keep in mind, as we're going through these introductory videos, we're just touching on things high level. We are not explaining everything in detail, so keep that in mind. You can go read the Constitution itself in black and white on propertarianism.com. The link I will put in the description and in the top comment. Another thing we're going to ask you not to do is don't just throw out a critique with no solution. One thing we hear from people is they'll say, well, it might not work perfectly because of this or that, but then they don't actually have a better idea. They don't actually have a solution to propose. So let's be realistic here, folks. Let's not try to compare this to some unrealistic utopia. What we're trying to do here is build the best system that is possible in the human realm, and we actually know how to do that now, at least far better than we ever did in history, because we have so much more science about humanity. We have so much history. We have so much easy access to information with the internet. Our knowledge about humanity and how human beings work has exploded in recent decades, and so we know how to do this. We can look back at history and say, yeah, this type of a system works better than that type of system, and here's why. And so this Constitution puts all that knowledge to work. So this Constitution is based on empiricism and science. It fixes some of the mistakes that were made after the original U.S. Constitution. It strengthens a lot of the good aspects of the original Constitution. It fixes some of the weaknesses in the original Constitution. And if you're one of those people that says there were no weaknesses in the original Constitution, you're just wrong. There were some. And think about it. The Founding Fathers were doing that before Karl Marx was even born. There's no way they could have foreseen the explosion of mass media, the ability for our enemies to lie at scale, and all of this. So this updated Constitution deals with all that in a very effective way, as you will find out. This Constitution utilizes insights from propertarianism, as I explained. It provides a solution to the present crisis. It provides a long-term solution for the grassroots right wing in both America, and hopefully this will cascade to the rest of the West as well. And there are some aspects in the Constitution that lead in that direction, as you will hear from Kurt in later videos. This Constitution contains some aspects that all regular people, non-elite people, are going to like, as you will see, especially in regards to fixing the monetary system and all of that. This updated Constitution will, as I said, contribute to saving the entire Anglo or Eurosphere, the European peoples, from a dark age. If we don't have something like this happen, the West will enter a dark age. Make no mistake. But it's not going to enter a dark age because we're not going to allow it. But we have to have something written down to rally around. And folks, this is it. This will save us from a dark age, and instead it will usher in a new renaissance. The last thing I'll mention here before we go into the portion of the conversation talking about the policies, there are a couple of videos and playlists that I have made that will be very helpful for you as far as context around this Constitution, more information about propertarianism, the logic behind the way the law is laid out and all of that. So I've got links to that in the description and in the top comment, a couple of playlists that if you want more information, that's a great place to start, and it'll really help you understand some of the things that we're talking about when we go through this updated American Constitution. And then a great forum for you to ask questions is in the YouTube comments right below the video. I will be looking through those comments. Hopefully some of the other folks who are knowledgeable on this will be looking through the comments and helping answer questions. And then also on my Facebook page, I will have a post with this video on it, and you can put your questions there. So the link to my Facebook page is in the description in the top comment. And just make sure you're connected with me every place on social media that you can. The links are in the description of this video because YouTube is going to be changing their rules on December 10th, 2019. And hopefully my channel will survive that. But if for some reason it doesn't, if you're connected with me elsewhere, I will be letting you know where I will be posting these videos. I'll keep you informed of that at my other social media sites and on my website, johnmarksays.com. So let's go now to this part of the conversation where Kurt and I are going through and touching on some of the key policies in this updated American Constitution. And you're going to see how these policies are really going to improve your life and our lives directly in a very tangible way. And I think you're really going to love it. And the first topic we're going to talk about, which is fixing the money system, that's going to benefit everybody, no matter where they are on the political spectrum. The only people that are really going to lose there are bankers and some other elite parasitic types. So let's go into the conversation here.
Most of what I do in policy is to separate the commercial investment, commercial finance investment banking, and consumer. So if you're a consumer, you're taking a zero credit loan out of the Treasury for whatever you can afford to. And when there's liquidity need, in other words, you probably don't, if people don't understand this, if they need to put money into the economy, they don't put it into the banking system, they put it into you.
Yes. Another way to explain it is instead of bankers bringing money into existence in the form of a loan and charging people interest on it, charging you interest on it, the Treasury is cutting the bankers out of the equation. They're the ones that are putting money into the economy, bringing money into existence, not in the form of a loan, and it's being distributed instead of going to banks who then lend it to you. It's going just to you, and the middleman bankers are cut out of it, and it reduces a massive amount of the debt slavery and debt problem that people have. Was that a pretty good description?
Think of it as nationalizing consumer credit. It means your house is going to be paid for in 8 years.
Yes,
right?
Instead of 30. Yeah.
It means it means the college, your university has to carry the loan.
Yes, this is another fantastic one I wanted to make sure to highlight is this would absolutely gut the leftist control of the universities. So not only would student loans only be given and state funding only be provided for STEM plus law, none of this other pseudoscience garbage, but also the university itself would have to be the one who takes out the loan, and then they have to pay it back to the Treasury by getting payroll deduction from the student after they graduate. So in other words, universities cannot make a profit off of garbage degrees anymore. This would totally gut.
And also, if you're out before the second year, they have to eat the loan.
Yes.
You're going to see what happens to how colleges behave if you make those two changes.
Changes the incentives completely.
Now you can be a professor. If you say something that's false or irreciprocal, it's criminal.
Yes.
Now what happens? So now you've got universities stop being leftist theological institutions, and they're only able to say truthful and reciprocal things.
That's right. And just in case there is any audience that has not been exposed to my previous videos or Kurt's writings on this, when we're talking about being able to prosecute false or irreciprocal behavior, the false part of that is not somebody willy-nilly deciding somewhere what's false and what's true. It's people who speak in public have to ensure that their statements pass several empirical falsehood tests. They don't have to prove everything they're saying is 100% true because that's difficult, but they have to pass the test.
You have to say, I'm not saying anything false and irreciprocal. In other words, that really isn't that difficult, but you also have to realize that loser pays. So you can't go sue your professor for saying something unless you want to get triple damages.
Yes, because if you take the suit to court and you lose, then you're going to be paying.
You're going to be paying.
Yeah. So it's not abused. Yep.
We get rid of all this, I can get away with it.
Yes.
So there's two things we're getting. So a second thing with the Treasury is we're getting rid of what's called rent seeking. And unfortunately, that's a really bad term. What it means is profiting without contributing to production.
Yes.
So what this will do is I'm trying to force investment community into longer term returns instead of short term returns. And I'm trying to force investment into investment returns rather than parasitism upon our people. So if we deprive the investment community of the ability to seek mortgage rents, right, our car payment rents, if those things are essentially whatever you can pay them. And moreover, the government is handing out money that goes against that account whenever the economy is getting harsh, so your life gets easier.
All right, John, Mark jumping in here quickly to clarify, Kurt is not talking about taking money from you and giving it to somebody else. What he's talking about is money coming into existence and going directly into the economy rather than going to bankers who then lend it into the economy. So it's removing this massive debt slavery aspect we have right now that is totally unnecessary. And if this is brand new to you, you need to realize there are millions and millions of people on the grassroots right that understand that this needs to be fixed. And this has been understood for a while. There were people that understood this very, very clearly and tried to warn America about it. There were congressmen that tried to warn America about it in 1913 when the Federal Reserve Act came into being. This is a battle that has waged actually throughout American history at different times. There were presidents who fought the bankers. Andrew Jackson fought the bankers. Thomas Jefferson warned us against bankers. And they were basically all saying the same thing. Don't give your economy over to bankers. In other words, don't let bankers be the ones who bring money into existence and print the currency. And that's what we allowed in 1913. And so really, when we're fixing this, we're just following the advice of the Thomas Jeffersons and the Andrew Jacksons and all the people throughout our history and the millions of people today that know that we need to change this system because it is inherently parasitic. So if this is new to you, just understand that there are many millions of people on the grassroots right today, and there were many, many people throughout American history, including presidents, founding fathers, etc., that understood the basics of this issue, and this updated American Constitution here fixes that problem and makes it so that it can never be a problem again.
A couple of things are going really, really interesting things happens to the investment community. They have to go put their money in things that have less certain and therefore longer returns. And it sort of solves the problem of absorbing so much free capital that's out there right now. I don't want to.
That's interesting though. So it's adjusting the incentives so that there's better investment, and so that we don't have this dynamic where, for example, bankers are just creating money out of nothing by typing numbers into a computer, charging interest on it, and it's not producing anything for the economy. They're just collecting money off of nothing.
Yeah, and then they bait people into debt, and then they have debt collectors you appropriate from people.
Yes.
So let's destroy that whole rude economy.
And this will have it's hard to describe to people what a massively positive impact this will have on the economy.
Well, you'll be able to run a household on one income.
Yes. Yep. A lot of this financial pressure that people feel is artificially created by this dynamic that Kurt is talking about here, and is eliminated by this.
A lot of the economic stuff is frankly way too technical for the audience. And what happens is if I do it at a level that's short, some idiots will come up and tell me I'm wrong, and they'll make a video.
Yes. So we don't have to go into, yeah.
I have to say, just, I'll cover it later.
Yeah. But I think the audience can get the point here, Kurt, that this is going to make everybody's life dramatically easier. And just to mention, there's a couple of videos, like there's one called The Money Masters is a video series that's great to watch. It might be on YouTube. Just if this is brand new to you, it kind of helps you understand some of the background.
You are being screwed every day by that. Everything you think about the financial and political sector, you can't put it into words like you can't put morality or Western civilization or conservatism or traditionalism into words, but you know it, right? Well, the same thing is with everything wrong with our society. When I talk about pseudoscience and numeracy, if I explain to you what's been done to you, you'll start hanging people tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep. But it's great that you understand it, Kurt. You understand it well enough to write down how to fix it.
Yeah, they're going to kill me for it.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen, Kurt. I know you're just being funny, but it is. I mean, let's not gloss over this. This is dangerous to a lot of people who are making a lot of money by being parasites, but it is within our power to end it.
Trillions, every year. Trillions. If people talk about, I want to take $100 million from Bill Gates. I mean, you're a freaking idiot. Do you know where trillions is going? Trillions. $100 billion means each of us gets like 3. In the end, or 30 rather.
Yeah, just take it from Bill Gates and hand it out. I mean, that's nothing. That
guy does more good with his $100 billion, right? Every day of his life than the entire government would ever do. in a year.
And that's why this is so powerful is, see, the left kind of capitalizes on a lot of this financial stress that people experience, and they say, well, we're just going to take money from the billionaires and give it to you. But as Kurt is pointing out, that's really not a solution. It wouldn't really actually do that much. What we're talking about here would have a tremendous, tremendous positive impact on everybody that's not like a banker or an elite scumbag.
So let's talk about those two things. If we took all that dead capital we call Washington, D.C., and we reallocated it to different cities in different states. In other words, if everybody wasn't trying to compete for control of the federal dollars, but instead we had a lot of states working locally, and people had their education problem changed, their financial problem was changed. If those two things happened, what would happen to be the greatest reallocation of capital since the Romans had their restructuring.
Wow.
So it's, when you brought up earlier, it's going to change. No, people have no idea. This is like the church had 50% of Europe's capital dead
in the Middle Ages.
Right. And so what could we do? I mean, what do you think they had to reclose the monasteries for? And so we get the capital back in motion. And so look what happened. Well, it's the same thing now, is that we have a lot of dead capital. All the money in the country is around Washington. It's around New York City where they print the money. And it's around LA where they print the propaganda. Well, if you make it so you can't propaganda lie anymore, there's no money to be made in usury, except other than investment, and that the government's been devolved for the states, that capital is reallocated.
Yes.
We can start generating human capital again. Now, people don't think of it this way, but children are human capital. I mean, they're a kind of capital, a kind of production, and they're expensive. And if you suck all the money out of middle-class families.
Yes. So to just give a quick example, imagine if the payments you had to make for your mortgage and your car were cut in half or just drastically reduced from what they are now. Imagine you could spend that on your kids, on having kids. People would feel like they could afford kids, and people would feel like they could afford having a one-income home and the mother staying home with the kids. And there would be more spending money to spend on other things instead of just sending it to bankers who are just sitting there really producing nothing.
Well, you know, most of the big cities are bankrupt, right? So if we make those their own city states, they can run there's crazy little programs as long as they want, but they can't take the rest of the people down with them.
Yes, if they want to do that. And that's one of the things you have in the Constitution as well, and I don't want to get off track, but where a lot of these cities that are just crazy leftist cities that want to do this stuff, they basically become city-states and they can't impose their will on the rest of the country.
They have no power outside of their borders.
Yes, which is fantastic.
And that's what we want, right? I mean, that's the vehicle. The vehicle by which we've been undermined is actually immigration. We would have won. We won we won nature versus nurture. We won gender differences. And right now we're winning racial differences. And you know, we're certainly going to win IQ and class differences.
You're talking about scientifically, the science that's coming out is completely destroying the left on all of this.
So the only reason they have anything is because they promised us they wouldn't use the 65 Immigration Act to do this, and they did.
Yep.
Well, you know, under proprietarian law and under the Constitution, you're liable for that. We're coming after you.
And what Kurt's talking about here, if there's any audience that is new, is that immigrants, non-whites, vote more than 2-to-1 left. And so it's not that they have won. It's not that the left is winning the argument or winning over the historical European peoples, because most white people vote right wing. It's that they're just importing voters. And under proprietarian law, they are liable for that because that is imposing a cost. And it's allowing them to put lies into the public and all of this, which can also be prosecuted. So,
you know, the Jews used a great tactic after the war, which is to go after and recollect from the Nazis. What do you think we're going to do after this civil war? We're to go recollect from those leftists.
Yes. Restitution.
Right. Yeah. So that's what
great.
I'm scared about.
That is great. I mean, this is why I say, folks, you guys know me. I'm pretty good at marketing and getting the word out and creating catchy phrases and stuff like that. But I am not exaggerating when I say I get so excited reading this and talking about this and seeing what's in this Constitution, because this is what needs to happen. This is the restoration of the Western way, the Western success strategy, and our enemies will not be able to get away with what they used to be able to get away with because we have such a solid foundation here. So, Kurt,
a moral license.
Yes.
It's a moral license, a set of demands, a means of insurrection or demands, and a means of transition. So it's what I set out to produce. And, you're not going to figure it out in 5 minutes in a comic book, although I bet one of our guys will eventually do that.
People get pretty good at it, yes.
But
Yes.
in all seriousness, I put a lot of work into this. It will work. The real problem for Western man is, what are we? Because we do it by tradition. We didn't have our Bible written down, so to speak.
Yes, we did it by instinct.
We do it by tradition, instinct, inheritance. We don't have the white law, right?
Yep.
Like the Quran, right? But now we do.
Yes, this is it. I was just going to go through a quick list of a couple of the policies that I think people would like that we didn't touch on, and then you can comment if you want, but I think that people would like to hear this because this is more of the stuff that's really going to directly affect them. We talked about the financial aspect, really fixing that, and we talked about how norms and social policy and how the government is structured is really going to be at the state level, and we're not going to have this big, huge federal government bureaucracy that's going to make people very happy. And then just some simple stuff. No one from outside has the right of refuge, asylum, or immigration.
No.
Fixing the immigration issue.
The natural law, they can't have any right.
Yes. Voting, what you call in the Constitution peerage, I believe, is limited to, everybody doesn't get a vote. It's limited to certain types of people who are much less likely to want to be parasites. We'll put it that way.
You have to demonstrate competence before you can influence others.
Yes.
Because all politics is violence, force. So if you can't demonstrate that you're worthy of it, then why should we give you any influence? I mean, if you're protected under natural law and you're given all these benefits and you're not able to demonstrate that you have ability to contribute instead, then why should you have opinions?
Yes. Why should you have a say over somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
And just to remind the audience, the founding fathers and the original Constitution did not give everyone the right to vote. And that was one of the big mistakes is full franchise.
It's one of the big errors, right? I mean, there's only a couple catastrophic errors, both in the Roman period and in the modern, and it's that we gave the franchise. The Romans said it. We screwed this up. I mean, they said it. I mean, and we knew it too. I know why we did it, but we shouldn't have.
Yeah, let's stop making the same mistakes.
Right. I mean, you either, if you earn it, you value it.
Yep.
There's no incentive to conform without it.
Yep. That's great. No more welfare state. If you get any kind of benefits, you don't get it without working, if I remember correctly from the Constitution, Kurt.
Yeah, it's a nice way of doing things, but I mean, you have to see the other things I put in there, which is, an awful lot of people are redirected to creating an aesthetic commons because there's going to be an increasingly large supply of surplus labor. Mm. But I mean, if we turn a lot of people into gardeners, basically, I'm exaggerating, but you can have an awful beautiful commons.
But they're doing something of value. They're not just sitting around collecting welfare checks.
Yeah, you have to contribute.
And it's an important point because you don't have to have, every state can choose how they want to do it, but you don't have to have like this completely heartless place if you don't want to. You can have some help for people, you can provide some work for people, but you're not going to have this welfare state as we know it today.
Well, I say stuff prosecutorially, but if you disagree with what I'm putting out here, you can't be a good person. You can't. How can you possibly want anything otherwise except to punish people because of genetic envy?
Yeah, because this is so in line with the empirical definition of morality, which is reciprocity. There are ways to, it's an important point, there are ways to help people out within the bounds of reciprocity. You don't have to just leave them to die in the street. That's what I love about this, going back to what we talked about earlier, is every citizen, every resident, even every person has recourse in court to stop any violation of reciprocity. It's not like you have to sit there and put up with it.
You can sell a judge. You better be right because you're going to pay for it if you don't. But I
Yes.
mean,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
it's
That's great.
nobody gets a free ride.
Yes. Another couple of policies here that I thought would interest people. You have one where the speech or the social platforms, obviously we would think of Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, above a certain size, they become what you call commons, and they're subject to reciprocity, and all the data belongs to the user who created that data. So it eliminates this problem of censorship and allowing lying but not allowing truth tellers and that kind of thing.
I wrote a propositional court piece for class action against the social media, each social media company, Facebook being the one I actually showed people. And, you know, there's absolutely no reason why you and I have interests on Facebook, why we couldn't have political affiliations or political disinterests, and that stuff would never reach us.
Oh, so you're saying a person could say, I don't want to see this or I don't want to see that, and that's fine.
Right. And the point is that the only reason Facebook doesn't do the right thing is because they want to do the wrong thing.
Yes.
Right? So it's an easy problem to fix. There's no reason they can't have every kind of political discourse on there, and people just choose opt in or out based on their affiliations. And they know that stuff anyway. In other words, they know within 100 clicks, they can profile you, right? You know, so deeply that it's offensive to you.
I see what you're saying. So Facebook could create a structure to where if an individual doesn't want to have certain content reach their eyes, they can set that up, that type of thing.
Yeah, or an advertiser. I mean, there's no reason you can't have that in there, except that they intentionally want to use it to cause harm.
Yes.
So, I mean, so in any event, the new version I have is much less kind than what you're reading.
But takes care of that problem, which many right-wingers are very pertinent, very aware of.
You can't argue that Facebook and Google and YouTube, or maybe even Twitter, are not the same thing as a telephone system.
They're public service, yeah.
They're public services now. And I'm sorry, you know, they may not want that to be, but it is. And, you know, and if they're not, then we can nationalize the code and make one ourselves.
Yep. That's great. Another couple ones you have in here as far as policies: marriages between a man and a woman. No more child support or alimony, which means that the vast majority of divorces are initiated by women. So in the current system, women can just divorce on almost any kind of a whim and they get cash and prizes. That will not be the case anymore. Prenuptials cannot be violated.
If you do prenups and that, what will happen is women will be way more careful about getting married.
Yes.
Right? And men will be less terrified of getting married.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Because right now, you know, if you're a guy and you live in this country, the United States, hell, any Western European country, especially if you have any assets, you're stupid to get married. Absolutely stupid.
Because the whole legal system is rigged against you if the woman wants to.
I mean, I can't tell you what my marriage cost me. You know, and you look at a guy like Bezos, right? I mean, that's just nuts.
Yes.
I mean,
she's getting billions and billions just from
nonsense.
And she didn't really do anything.
I mean, because a man's investment equity. I mean, I had the same problem in my corporations. I mean, why does my wife I mean, I've actually built it into the later shareholder agreements that if you get divorced, it all go back to the company.
Interesting.
Or it get reissued to you after your divorce.
Yes. So that's a great one. Another one here: tax discount for every child up to the age of 16. So it helps people out who want to have children. And we already talked about the universities and the college system. And then the last one I wanted to mention here is just the foreign policy and the treaties aspect, exiting the United Nations, no treaties that violate the Constitution. With Mexico, you know, we're going to build a wall, repatriate the illegal immigrants, etc. So I think a lot of people are going to really like that aspect of it as well.
I actually say it differently today, is if you can't contain your people, you've surrendered your sovereignty. In other words, we're happy to, if you can't contain you, we're going to rule you and contain them.
Yes, it's basically an act of war if you can't contain your people and they're coming over here.
That's irreciprocity, and if you can't contain your people, you just gave us license to fly in the bombers.
And do whatever it takes to protect our people and our nation from any imposition of costs. Yep. Great stuff, Kurt. I'm really excited about this. And again, folks, if you have any questions, definitely put them in the comments. Go to my Facebook page and feel free to comment there. And we'll have myself and people that are knowledgeable about these things answering questions. Kurt may jump in at times, but we're going to have future videos as well where we go through some things in more detail. So make sure you are subscribed to my channel. This has been part 1 of the intro overview videos we're doing on this updated American Constitution. In part 2, we're going to go over the table of contents so you can see how it's laid out. That's going to be a significantly shorter video than this one. In part 3, we're going to go over the objectives of this updated American Constitution and a couple of the ways in which it differs from the original. And then in part 4, we're going to go through the section that Kurt has written that actually comes before the Constitution itself. And Kurt says this is laid out like a court case. It's like a prosecution of our enemies. And you're also going to see in part 4 how this Constitution builds on a long tradition of the Western way, the Western success strategy, and takes it to the next level. And then, of course, after that, we're going to have more in-depth videos where we're going through article by article. So very exciting stuff. There's nothing more important than this going on in the grassroots right wing right now. Share it around everywhere, and we'll see you next time.